Yep, it's on. All right,
Sweet.
let me see if I can. All right, that tweet came up immediately. So let's do that. All right, I retweeted it.
Sweet.
And let me give the Discord a heads up. All right, that's it. I let everyone know. Okay, so let's let a few people come in, and then, you know, once enough people are in, we'll start promptly at round 2. Hi, chat. Hi, Angel Dranger. Today's topic is has multiple parts to it. What the what told me silence. He's very on brand. And then he said no. Okay.
Should I reveal I had a somewhat snarky tweet idea of like talking about everyone's favorite non-controversial topics, including gatekeeping, and then the other ones. Should I reveal them or no? Don't want to spoil.
You mean like during the conversation or?
No, just in my tweet to let people know.
Yeah, why not? Whatever. It's gonna come up, so
yeah.
Give people a heads up. A little bit of a tease.
Sweet.
And we should be ready to go in 2 minutes. Just waiting for more people. Talking about everyone's favorite non-controversial anime topics. So gatekeeping, censorship, and the Crunchyroll Awards. Okay. How's everyone doing? How's everyone's week been? Oh, we got Drax already chiming in saying, but if I gatekeep, how can I turn more people into mecha fans? Seems kind of contradictory to my goal. I mean, yeah, like that's the whole problem. But we'll address that. We'll get in it. We'll get into that. I promise. And definitely, guys, if you like want to chime in, you know, give your take, kind of your experience, like all fair game. Just chime in the chat. I don't know if you guys can. And let me know if you guys can chat on Twitter. Like, if you can't, I think I put the link to the YouTube. If you can just, you know, if you want to be part of the chat and give your takes on the whole thing. Someone is confused that you're a girl.
Oh yeah, that's my friend Maz. You remember?
I know. We were on the Attack on Titan podcast.
Yeah, that was fun. We had a fun time with you. That was a great podcast.
We need to do that again.
We do.
Especially when things pick up.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so the Twitter, so people can chime in on Twitter. Okay. Angel Dranger just tried it out. So whatever works. But if you want to give the YouTube some views, click the link, please. But that's all good. All right. We're going to start very soon. In a minute. I swear I'm not baiting you guys.
A literal minute.
Literal minute.
Yeah.
Unless you guys tell us to start early. Oh, yeah. Someone else chiming in from Twitter, YouTube. So wherever you're, you know, chatting from, again, we'll address your comments as it comes up. We want to hear everyone's sort of perspectives because, like, there's no clear answer with this. Someone loved our AOT podcast together.
Oh, that's so nice.
That's awesome. Glad I did. I'm glad I did okay.
You put the team on your back.
I was with some veterans there. I wasn't sure. I was like a little nervous.
You were a veteran. You sounded great.
Thank you. All right. It is 2 p.m. So let's get this thing going. So this week in the anime community,
in the grumbling, which we've enjoyed.
Grumbling or the rumbling, I wasn't upset by it. I was more like, okay, just another day on Annie Twitter, like just another kind of thing that came up. So we're going to give you some background on that. As some of you are already aware, we're just going to touch on it a bit and kind of like talk about it, like kind of explore what caused it and all of that. So before that, I am your host, OniMaru, and this is Just Weebs, streaming from YouTube, but also to Twitter. And joining me again for this stream is ShaKing.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Awesome to have you on. And I think I wouldn't, I wouldn't, wow, I just flubbed that line. Who better to unpack all of this complex issue than with you? So there you
What
go.
you
That's all I
mean
would
is
say.
you wouldn't have been dragged into this grumbling without me. So I apologies ahead of time, and you're welcome.
That's extremely, extremely true. So let's get into it. So this week, gatekeeping what actually made it to the trending on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it was about anime. It shows how mainstream it's gotten. But where did this all start? It was one random guy kind of just gave this take about, he called out all these fans that watch kind of the usual suspects, My Hero
But then some
Academia.
not so usual suspects too.
You want to go into it?
Yeah, it was funny. So you mentioned it. Like we see kind of, I won't say, okay, I'll just say it. We see like dumb tweets like this all the time where someone is like, if you only watch these shows, you're not a true fan. And like you see that for like every medium, no matter what artistic medium. Like if you only listen to radio music, you're not a true music fan. If you only watch reality TV, you're not a true television fan. So now we got the anime version, I guess. And the tweet is, all your common knowledge of anime is Demon Slayer, Naruto, Inuyasha, Bleach, One Piece, Fate, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Gundam, My Hero Academia, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Ghost in the Shell, then you're not an anime fan. Normies, stay the fuck out of anime. And it's a really funny, interesting tweet because we've seen these sentiments before, but we have not seen this exact list of shows used to illustrate true normieism that seems to come right out of the 90s, early 2000s, which is really funny.
I love how you coined the phenomenon there, normieism. But it's true. Like I usually see most of these anime, the ones that were like, what? Ghost in the Shell, Gundam. Like, okay, man.
Yeah. On the other side of normieism, I think I always say this in kind of like a tongue-in-cheek way, but like Ghost in the Shell is one of the peak snob anime. Like that's one of those, like, if you're a veteran or like, you've seen a lot of shows, you generally hold a lot of respect for Ghost in the Shell. Like you'll see that among the favorites of a lot of like, I jokingly say snobs. Like, so I'm like, how is that a normie show in the same breath as like Naruto and My Hero Academia?
Yeah, I actually always thought I'm the normie because I couldn't get into Ghost in the Shell. Like I have a friend that loves it, and meanwhile I'm basic and falling asleep. Mind you, I'm a 13-year-old, but falling asleep at midnight. Like, oh, Ghost in the Shell is on. Okay, this will put me to sleep. Okay, great. Yeah. But I do have to give that another look. But I never considered it normie or to not have cred.
It's not a normie show. It's so weird. So I think you get
Gundam,
like Gundam, which like people are like begging other people to watch mecha series, but apparently if you watch Gundam, you're too normie. I've never seen that. I've never seen that as like a normie tier show. So
like I still have never gotten to the original Mobile Suit Gundam, which is on my list, and I've watched a lot of anime, and there's still some that it's just that's not. I wouldn't call that entry level, at least not anymore. No. It's early 80s. So
see, you need like watch guides for like how to get into it. Like people don't even know where to start. So
I mean, it would have been hilarious. Like I think personally it would have been hilarious if one of the ones on there he called out was Monogatari.
That would be funny.
Just like, you normies and your Monogatari with your watch list of how to watch it. Normies. You don't understand the medium.
Well, speaking of watch lists, Fate made the list, which is some aspects could be kind of normie, but then other aspects are very not normie. It's like it's not a clear-cut normie series. And like, so you get like both sides of this, of like this sentiment behind this tweet, I think a lot of people disagree with. And then the actual picks are just so bizarre that you're like, you have to kind of double take it. Like, how did that make your list? Like, how is that the line of normieism?
Yeah, like Drax says here, Gundam takes a lot of dedication to be into it. It has like 6 different timelines. Doesn't sound very normally accessible.
Yeah.
So it was weird. But back to like the tweet, it was just like, like I don't know, like the sentiment is that I think, having these fans that are only into these shows aren't true anime fans. Like, it doesn't count as true anime fans. They're not doing good for the community. So the solution is to keep them out because they either water down stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And naturally, many people rejected this take, on the surface. Even corporations, Funimation, Netflix, anime subtweeted it.
Anime Netflix subtweeted.
Or anime Netflix, something like that.
Would love that. Need to get subtweeted by anime Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. But because I don't think most people agreed, that because anime has become, so mainstream at this point. Not many people did agree with him in terms of, anime should be gay kept, the fandom, we should be protecting it. But I feel like I was looking more towards his tweets. Because on the surface, again, I feel like fans that, just to make this point clear, fans that only have watched those shows and haven't watched too much or whatever still count as anime fans. They're still engaging in the medium. So I don't think that is, too much of a problem. Yeah. But as I was reading more of his tweets, I saw that there's more to this that I feel is worth exploring. There was more that he was getting at. He just worded it horribly with his initial tweet. So... Did you want to bring up anything else about the?
No, I think that's a good way of introducing it, because I think a lot of people saw this as trending and they were kind of like, okay, this seems kind of dumb, but also funny, but they probably didn't see the follow-up tweets, which are still interesting. It might be still a bit misguided, but are still interesting. And as you said, they kind of get into some aspects that I think a lot of people feel, even if they don't feel to the same degree.
Yeah, and that's what I felt. I don't want to endorse gatekeeping or anything, but I think it goes beyond gatekeeping. And I think that is the conversation that is worth having as anime fans and people that have either, been in it for a long time and other newer fans. It's something that's worth looking at. And I think that's, from his tweets, that's what he wanted to get at. He was like, oh, I just needed to be blunt to, get the attention to kind of make my point across. But it's you already put everybody on guard. So no one's going to be having this conversation. That you want. So the larger conversation really comes down to being about censorship. It's all about censoring the medium. That's really what he was annoyed about, that these new fans are coming in, making big deals with stuff they're uncomfortable with, unlike the veteran fans who, have been around it, they don't mind it, they understand the cultural differences. But now, again, these new fans who don't understand that are, now calling for these things to be canceled, and that is ruining the experience. Yeah.
Which is a completely different point than what he originally was saying. It's
he conflated a bunch of arguments together. One of his tweets was he was people that have pronouns in their bios and activists are the ones that should be kept out. I'm like, wait. How did we go from people who watch Demon Slayer, Ghost in the Shell to this is very specific. Yeah. This is too specific.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so funny. It's so funny to see that, because I think that censorship is such an interesting topic, because it's you always see people, I think in general, a lot of people don't like censorship. And then you see the way they interpret censorship is really funny. I think it's interesting that he conflated, if you've only seen these normie shows, then your opinion doesn't matter, but only because I think that you're also going to tell me I can't watch these other shows. There's no correlation between the two. Most of the people who are only watching Demon Slayer and My Hero Academia, they're not I don't think they really give a shit about the other series that you're trying to protect,
Yeah.
It's just such a weird jump, but
yeah, someone here says, I think he then said it was SJWs ruining it. And that's where it really, all of this stems from. It's the whole censorship issue, which is, it's a can of worms, but it's really what the conversation's about. It's all for a part of this larger hot button issue in the anime community that dates a few years back. Probably even before a few years back, but it's most notable with the whole controversy surrounding Goblin Slayer, Shield Hero, and even some anime airing this season, which are have put off some people, and other people are having to defend the source material, and they feel like, these people are just blowing it out of proportion.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like it is kind of the Goblin Slayer effect, where I'm not sure if this was the intention or if it's just the general isekai craze, but I feel like people took note of how the controversy surrounding that kind of blew up and created a lot of discussion and attention. And then I'm not sure if it resulted in other, maybe a bit more edgy, controversial series being picked up, but I feel like this kind of outrage marketing really took off. And I feel like that's been a way for like series to be noticed. Like you got Goblin Slayer, then you have I think it was Shield Hero the next season, I think, and now we have Redo of a Healer, and it's just like such an interesting progression to see how.
Yeah, but that one actually isn't being talked about as much. The problem now is more so because I think Redo of Healer, at least what I've said, is that people are surprised, like, oh, more people aren't talking about it. That's good, but it's because you kind of knew what to expect with that.
Yeah, there was no surprise.
So the people that wanted to watch that went to go watch that, and the people that knew what it was were like, nope, bye. And with Mushoku Tensei, that's the one that's stirring more shit, and that's because that wasn't so clear. That was like, new isekai, oh, this looks interesting, and then every single week there's something slightly more questionable, and people are like, well, why is this in here? Why is this ruining the anime? What? And then other people that are okay with that, it's like, hey, I don't see an issue, and actually it's not what you're making it out to be, and I think that's the troubling one, and I think that's where the problem comes when it's like accessible anime, like anime that reaches a wider audience. And then you have different types of fans, the more veteran fans, but it's also accessible to the newer fans. And then there's different levels of comfort there. It's like, and then they go watch it and like, hey, why is this in here? While someone else could be like, oh, it's just, same shit.
Yeah.
So, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah, I found the Mushoku Tensei situation interesting because I'm not watching it and I had no idea what it would be about. I just knew it was another isekai this season, and I'm not watching that many, so I just didn't pick it up. But you were telling me the situation the other day, and I think that's like a really interesting situation. Like, how you mentioned that how like the light novel was translated in a way that like watered down the content, and that created a lot of confusion between people who had read the translated light novel and people who are just watching the series.
Yeah, that brought up a whole other controversy over localization. Like, why are these translators doing this? Why are they, censoring the content and deceiving us into what it is that the author, actually intended? Because again, there was more questionable elements that were watered down for the English localization. So when they went to defend it because it was adapted straight into the anime, like, wait, no. If you read the source material, that's not actually how it is. And then it's like, no, the actual source material that wasn't translated, that is the case.
Yeah.
So, and I think Drax earlier made a good point. The Streisand effect, I think that's what it's called. It's the more you talk about something, the more overblown it is when it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's the correct term for it, the Streisand effect, which is really interesting.
And someone else here from Twitter said, I think it's more of a young people problem than a normie problem.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting aspect that is really true too. I think there are a lot of young fans, and I've noticed this before. I'm not sure if this is the correct time for my gatekeeping story I told you yesterday, but like a lot of young fans just have a very different perspective on the medium than we do, and not even just like, being in my like late 20s. It's like the 12-year-olds, like the 12-year-olds who are just getting into it from like TikTok or social media, who didn't have the same kind of barrier of entry that we did, or that even people younger than us did. And I experienced that a lot with my sister, who's 14. So she kind of like, I get that perspective from her of like how she gets into certain anime series from there. But, she hasn't I don't think she's tried to cancel anyone on Twitter for watching anime. So I don't know if she's in the same group.
Yeah, and I feel like the other reason it also gets overblown from both sides, and you know what? Actually, let me bring it back to the original flack that these popular series get, and why he called these out, and specifically, I'm not too sure about Ghost in the Shell, but the other ones is because a lot of the times, and I've seen this for a few years with these not Shield Hero, but I mean like the regular Boku no Hero, Demon Slayer,
Yeah.
like fans will catch one thing and then it'll become a big controversy over
Yeah.
this one small thing, and then a lot of people feel like, hey, this is overblown.
Yeah.
Like, why is this like they're, I don't know, shit talking the backgrounds, oh, they're not
Yeah.
up to snuff, or
Yeah.
what did they mean with this female character or something like that. And maybe there is a valid point to it, but it becomes this whole thing that maybe a majority of the people didn't kind of like
Pick up on.
notice.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. Maybe it's just a very vocal minority.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're invalid, but I'm saying they noticed it, but then they're calling for the thing to be canceled, for the author to be like taken down,
Yeah.
for his stuff to be censored, to him to apologize. And so the normal casual fan is like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
I don't, what's, because of what they're calling for. And then on top of that, to add more fuel to the fire, then they start feeling like they're being virtue signaled. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that in like specifically I've seen the My Hero Academia fandom has like a bunch of smaller kind of controversies with it, but I've seen one of them. I think one of the most prominent ones is how so many people hate the character Endeavor. I'm not sure how up to date you are.
I'm pretty up to date. I'm like 10 chapters behind on the manga.
Okay, so you're
up to date.
Yeah, so you can know like how Endeavor is like, he's a child abuser, he abuses his family, and like that's a huge plot point of he's messed up, and that they never try and shy away from that. They never try to, glorify him, and they paint it as like, a huge sin he's committed that he's trying to make up for. But there's a large part of the fandom that hates that he's, painted in any positive light whatsoever. And like anyone who praises him, they give them shit for it. They think like Hori's like a horrible like author for giving him page time. Like they're just like so behind that. And then other people in the fandom point out that it's a bit hypocritical because these are the same people who cheer on the villains of the series who are actually going around killing people. But then, and like everyone has their justifications for why they're.
You know what it is?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
It's on the tip of my tongue. Like black, like it's a very like a black and white morality. Like I think people have trouble sometimes, at least the larger fan base, with nuance. Like, because a lot of times real life doesn't have easy answers, doesn't have like, how you should deal with this person that's like was abusive, but now he's doing good things. Like there's a lot of mixed feelings, about certain situations, and there's no clear answers. So in a show, especially a shonen demographic oriented anime,
does have a lot of young fans.
It has a lot of young fans, but it paints morality in a simplistic way for the most part. This person's evil. He's doing evil things. This person's
they have heroes and villains, so they're kind of like, you got the two groups where it's kind of, you have a guy who's kind of a bad guy in the hero group, and then you got some sympathetic people in the villain group, and that makes it interesting where you're like, hey, maybe there's some like, maybe it's not so black and white, but for some people they're kind of like, no, I just reject the fact that this guy's good. I don't like that anyone says anything good. They're glorifying child abuse, whatever. Like they can only see it in black and white terms, even though the content is presenting it in not black and white terms.
Well, the thing is, and I'll get into specifically Endeavor in a second without spoiling too much, but because everyone kind of knows Endeavor's backstory for the most part if you've watched My Hero Academia. But I think it comes down to like, you like a villain, but you already in your head have the clear distinction. This guy's bad. He's a villain. He's evil. He's doing evil things, but he's kind of cool for a villain. But with Endeavor, or with any character that kind of toes that line, it's like it hits a little too close to real life, which is messy, which is like, oh no,
it is messy.
He's not a villain. But he's a good guy. Like, and then it's like, then it's you can't make that clear distinction where it's like, oh, I'm rooting for a villain. I know I'm rooting for a villain. I'm rooting for an abusive father. That doesn't. Okay. And then it leaves a bad taste, or it makes you a little.
Makes you question yourself.
Yeah, like you have uneven footing trying to deal with it. And so onto Endeavor, and I was reading the manga, I was questioning it too. And I was like, should he, does he deserve a redemption arc for what he's doing? But then I liked personally how it was being handled, that it was like he's being redeemed, but he's not being made to forget or be forgiven for what he did. He has to live with it.
Exactly. And I agree with that. And I think that is a really interesting aspect. And I think that has been made really clear in the context of the series. It's done a good job of never like saying, okay, you're forgiven for this. Like, we've just moved on from this. Like, it's all good now. They never show that. And I think there would be more of a conversation on the side of people who just hate him and the author if maybe they mishandled that. But since they seem to just take issue with like the subject matter and character on its own, not even taking into consideration how it's handled. And I think that causes a lot of friction in the fandom, which is why a lot of people, I've seen a lot of really terrible comments made at Hori because of like his writing behind this. And I think it's really bad that he's getting so much hate for trying to write a complex character. And that's where you get the outrage over like, they're trying to cancel him. They're trying to cancel this character. They're trying to censor something that I find enjoyable in a fictional setting that's not really hurting anyone. And I think we can all understand, like I'm sure we've all had at some point a situation where like we enjoy content that other people have found uncomfortable and they kind of call for it to be removed because it bothers them. And we're in the defense saying like, you know, just because you're uncomfortable with this doesn't mean that we should remove it. Just don't watch it. And that seems to be kind of like the plight of like, do we remove this content because some people don't like it? Or should they just, you know, they just don't watch it? And you get people on different sides for different series. So it depends.
And just a reminder for viewers, like this is a complex kind of issue within the community. There's no clear answer. Yeah. I think we're on the same page, Sha, of if you're uncomfortable, just don't watch it, but also don't try to cancel stuff. It's just don't watch it. And that's okay. That's valid. If it doesn't suit you, it's not your cup of tea. Yeah, that's fine. No one should make you feel like you have to watch that or you have to enjoy it. Your own experience is true to you. Yeah. But on the flip side, you know, we don't condone like gatekeeping is not the answer. You know, everyone, new or old, should be able to experience everything or choose to not, you know, want to experience something. Yeah.
And I think we did say it before, but I think it's also important just to reiterate, since it is the original topic of conversation, that like you can choose to only watch like My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, those shows, not watch anything, and you're still as much of an anime fan as someone who's watched 100 plus more shows. Like, you're still a fan. You know, fandom isn't something you have to earn. It's not like a promotion. It's not a title. It's not something that you have to prove to people. So, and that's something that's, I think, important to remind even kids that, like, you know, it's a hobby. You just you're watching cartoons. Like, you're not getting a black belt. Sorry. Like, it's not.
Here is your anime black belt. You have ascended. You command respect now. You know, and I feel like it's definitely like, I think the only way you're not a fan, like it makes you not a fan, is if you specifically as a person are like, oh, I'm only into DBZ. Like I don't care for other anime. You can
be a DBZ fan and not an anime fan. If you specify that,
Like, or like, oh, no, this is the only anime I watch. The rest is cringy. Like if you kind of make it, and that's fine. You know, that's what you want to do.
Also fine.
But then in that case, then okay, you're not an anime fan. You just like, you're a DBZ fan. You're a Samurai Champloo fan. You're a you know, specific show kind of fan.
And I think not to jump around too much, but I think what the person in the original tweet gets at, and that I think we both felt this too, is that while we can always say like, yeah, you're still a true fan, I think we all kind of have our own kind of like way of determining people who are more invested in the community and in anime as a medium. Like, you can kind of tell people who are more invested, and maybe you take their opinion or recommendation a bit more seriously, but it's not like they're any more of an anime fan than someone else. You just recognize that like there's different experience levels, there's different tastes, there's different, you know, there's a wide variety of shows in the medium that they've checked out compared to someone who's only seen a few series, you know? So I think a lot of the frustration can come from something like a person who's seen 3 shows, like say they see DBZ, My Hero Academia, and Demon Slayer, and they're like, yeah, like Demon Slayer is definitely the best anime of all time. And you're kind of like, you've seen 3 shows. Why are you making a blanket statement over the entire medium? You know, and I think it comes more down to attitude and what someone is saying rather than the validity of their passion for the, you know, medium.
Yeah, if they feel that, they're valid.
Yeah.
You know, hey,
Yeah,
best
exactly.
show ever. But as you know, someone that's maybe watched a little more, seen what's out there, and has watched Demon Slayer, like, hey,
Yeah.
well, try to check out a few more and
Yeah.
still see, and then see if you still feel that way. And if they
Exactly.
still feel that way, okay, still
Yeah,
valid.
exactly.
You know, still
Exactly.
valid.
Yeah,
But
and I yeah.
but
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think that's just something that happens with everyone where I think people don't want people who are less experienced in a hobby of them to have a very like overconfident kind of like standoffish attitude towards series. So like if you've listened to one album in your life, music fans don't want to hear that that's the best album of all time if it's the only one you've listened to. And
like, oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just, you know, that was sort
that
of
was the
relatable to me. Like, I don't know. Like, I would never consider myself a music fan. Like,
Or-
because like,
yeah, like a music expert.
Yeah, it sounds weird. Like, cause I don't, like, everyone likes music. I love music. I listen to
Yeah,
music all the
everyone
time,
loves music.
but I don't know if I'd ever consider myself like a fan because I'm not dedicated to it. I don't,
Yeah.
you know, I can't tell you what my top whatever albums are
Yeah,
or
yeah.
my, you know, I just listen to music and that's kind of it. So
Yeah.
I don't have the audacity to be like, oh yeah, I'm a music fan. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I feel too. Like I have certain bands and albums I'm passionate about, but I'm not going to speak in any sort of like expert opinion. I'm not Anthony Fantano. Like there's no Fantanoism when it comes to music. So like if other people are like, yeah, I like this album more, I'll take them seriously, but I'm also going to recognize the limits I have. And I'm not going to be like, definitely the best album of all time. I know.
Definitely a strong 7, Sean.
Yeah,
Definitely
a strong 7. Strong 7, light 7, decent 7.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's very important. It's kind of like, I think it boils down to censorship, but it really, in terms of the community, it all boils down to how you express yourself towards others because it is a community. We're coexisting.
Yeah.
And if you're hurting, taking away from someone else's experience on both sides, that's a problem.
Exactly.
And
I think so it's interesting how like I think the dude had a good original point that you could make about like you could make an original point and say like, hey, if you've only seen a few shows, please don't speak about the entire medium from an expert kind of standoffish point of, you know, tone. You could say that. Instead, he went to a complete other conversation. It was like, I don't want the SJWs, pronouns, and bio people censoring my anime. And that was like, well, that is not what you said in your original tweet at all.
I don't want them in the community. They ruin everything. I mean, like, they're valid to engage with it, voice their opinions on it, feel the way they do about it. I mean, I think it is a problem when they start calling for, you know, censoring stuff or whatever, but they're still valid in how they feel. You know, if they're uncomfortable. I think and I think everyone should still be allowed to be in the community. And just to highlight a comment here from someone, Maxime, I don't know. I don't want to pronounce it incorrectly, but I feel like anime is also something people feel very easily confident talking about without a lot of knowledge and research too. I've noticed that. I wonder why.
Yeah, I guess because it's like a cartoon, so people kind of think it's like childish, and they don't think that like, you know, they don't take it as seriously because they're not convinced to take it as seriously. Yeah,
that's probably true. And I feel like anime is very I don't know. It's kind of like I don't know. I don't have the words. I don't really know the reason why some people just feel again like an authority in talking about it. Maybe it's kind of like food. Like you kind of you eat food and you know what you like and you don't like, and you're just like, this is trash, this is not. And maybe they feel that same level of comfort with anime, like you said, because it's a cartoon.
It's also a very new medium compared to something like film, books, music.
True.
It's very new, so I think there's a lot of like, you know, there's not a lot of precedent set in terms of like, you know, academic research or, you know, it's not, you can't easily find things to be like to take an expert opinion on compared to like film, music, you know, other mediums that like people have been writing research papers, they've conducted studies, they have like, you know, institutions dedicated towards studying them and determining like the best craft for them. And we don't really have that. And it's also a foreign medium.
I would totally get a PhD in anime.
That would be fun. Right?
That'd be cool. But someone here actually brought up a good point. Man X Man. I feel like education is the better solution rather than gatekeeping. How do you feel about that?
I think that's definitely the best point. And that's like 100% accurate. Like if you say, hey, like here's why this is not good, or this is why this, maybe this is why this series is so weird. I think that's the best way to handle it. But I think, as you can see, even from this original tweet and the responses to everyone, education takes a lot more effort and a lot more self-control, and people would kind of rather yell at each other on Twitter. So they would rather just call each other stupid instead of saying, hey, this is why that's bad, and break it down. And I'm sure some people actually did it, but the natural inclination is to just yell at people, unfortunately.
Yeah, people like to yell. They get on their guard, they get defensive. Like this guy got defensive, but then he also made people on the defensive with his original tweet. Like, hey, you guys that watch these 10 shows and Ghost of the Shell, nah, not in my community.
You will manage to watch all of Gundam. Get out.
You watch 6 timelines of Gundam. Not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough. No, not a fan. Not a fan. But I will bring back to this education point, though. I think that's good, but I also see a problem with that too, because I don't think it should be made to feel like a requirement. Like, if you don't want to, like, it shouldn't be summer reading, because who wants to,
no one did summer reading because it was required reading.
All right, I gotta watch all of the 6 timelines of Gundam. I gotta watch Ghost in the Shell. I gotta watch all of these top anime on Mal, Steins Gate, to feel like now I'm educated enough to be an authority. It's
exactly.
I mean, it all comes down to opinion.
And they should just have fun with it.
Yeah, no, I think definitely you want to be enjoying yourself, but it's the context of how you express yourself. And then, I think the overall concern of anime being censored, is people having their enjoyment dampened, but also things being taken away when there's a clear demand for it, such as the whole interspecies reviewers debacle when Funimation pulled it from the streaming service.
And there were so many interesting takes on that. I think I liked your take that you told me, but I guess you can probably elaborate on that if you want in a sec. But I thought that was interesting because that's a completely different situation from the the Goblin Slayer and the Goblin Slayer, Redo Hero, whatever. Shield Hero. Yeah, so many heroes. And it's like all of these types of shows that have they're portraying content that people find distasteful and they find them harmful and they don't like seeing it. They find it uncomfortable and they don't think they're handling it in a tasteful way. Your mileage may vary on that. That's just the complaints we've heard. I'm not even saying I agree with that. Just that's what's been said. And then you have the interspecies reviewer situation, which was, I think everyone knew it would be really graphic sexual content. And then it kind of felt like Funimation after pushing it out to people were like, yeah, we changed our mind. It's too much. We got to go back. And then they just took it out when it was like, you guys, it felt like mismanaged. Like, you guys should have handled this better. You guys should have known what you guys would be streaming. It just felt like such a disorganized mess on every facet of it. So that one was interesting in a conceptual way too, of how did they pull this? What crossed the line where no, we cannot show this.
Yeah, and I think there's a bigger point to be said about that, which we'll get to as an example of kind of its important factor. It's not just the fandom that's, watering it down, censoring. It's really the corporations and the company's best interest. There's something to be said there about, capitalism and what's being done. But I'll get to that. But in terms of, I think the point you're talking about interspecies reviewers, Redo of Healer, those types of anime, my take, however people may feel about this, and it's my personal take, when I see those, I don't think they should be anime. I think they should be hentai. I just think if they're gonna be to that point, just give it a whole budget and be a full blown hentai, and then people know what they want. It has a full story and they go to it. Because I feel because anime has been growing and it's trying to reach such a larger fan base, which is a good thing. You want the medium to keep growing. You don't want your hobby to die, and more money is being put into it. When you have anime that are like that are so blatantly have the potential to make people uncomfortable, because now anime is trying to reach out to so many people from different walks of life. It's I don't know. It's kind of it shouldn't be there. I don't know. I'm not wording it correctly, but I feel like it should be more. It's not a good representation of what the medium can achieve or can do.
Yeah.
because it's like it's one thing to have those elements, like darker elements, or even sexual assault or whatever, can be in an anime if it's part of the larger story, if it's furthering something, like maybe it's a world building thing,
Yeah.
or like to just describe that people are evil, or whatever it is, but it's part of the story that it's trying to tell. But if it just exists for the sake of titillation or excitement or whatever, I'm not saying, I'm not going to kink shame. If you're into that, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like at that point, just make it obvious and just be like, this is like an NC-17 or a rated R. Maybe this is just an entire, like some labeling to let people know this is for these people. Let's not market it to a general audience, which is, I feel like the case was with, I guess, with what Funimation was trying to do and interspecies reviewers. Like it wasn't marketed as sort of like, it was marketed more like, oh, this fun romp with these guys doing the stuff, hitting up these clubs. Then it was like, oh no, wait, this doesn't suit our demographic. This is not what we wanted.
Yeah, and I remember hearing that apparently the source, like, it's just like straight up porn. So it's kind of like, what did Funimation think they were gonna get? Like, I'm not sure. Like, I feel like they should have a better grasp on what they're portraying, because I think it'd be fine if they just marketed it as hentai. Like, no one would probably have an issue with that. Yeah. But it seems like a weird miscommunication. I think it's interesting, but I think it's interesting. And I think in an interesting way, people would probably have less of an issue with interspecies reviewers staying on Funimation than they would something like Redo of a Healer being kept on. Even though, you can make a case that you could make a case that maybe Redo of a Healer is meant to show the dark.
A friend tried to tell me that too, and I was like, I don't know, maybe it's whatever, but opinions may vary.
Yeah.
But and with like, and again, because what I've even seen with Mushoku Tensei like this season, where I've seen people like tweet out like, oh, I can't believe other people that I know that I thought I knew are watching this show, and saying stuff like that. I was like, well, whatever. Human nature. We're curious. We want to see what's going on, or maybe we didn't expect it, or maybe we're compartmentalizing. We're like, this has good elements and other elements.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I think the trouble is, like, do people draw a line in the sand with these issues because the series itself, or on a principle basis? If your main issue is just, say you have an issue with the way Redo of a Healer portrays sexual assault. Do you have an issue with Redo of a Healer, or do you have an issue with it on a principle basis? Because if you have an issue with the principle, then you might have to apply that to series that you like. As much, I haven't seen Redo of a Healer, so full transparency, but there are probably some people out there who do not have an issue with the way Redo of a Healer portrays sexual assault, and they might have an issue with the way Berserk handles sexual assault, and Berserk is an all-time classic. So if you're going to take the stance that I don't want to see sexual assault portrayed poorly in an anime, do you have to take into consideration that some people will find the way Berserk portrays sexual assault poorly? Some people do think that. I don't think that for the most part, but like, there are some people who I've seen levy that complaint. And there are a lot of other series like Sword Art Online. People have had that complaint. So do we have an issue with the principle of how they're handling things? Or do we just have an issue with this one show doing a poor job? And I think sometimes people apply that complaint inconsistently. But if you stick to it as a principle of, I don't want to see sexual assault in my anime, then you have to think of how many series that would apply to that you might actually not have an issue with that other people might. So I think it kind of opens a huge can of worms. And as I think, who was saying it in our YouTube? I think it was Maxine. They said, I think the worst aspect of this is people trying to dictate how you should consume and discuss anime. And I think that's what it comes down to, is like, everyone has their own lines of like what they find, what they find offensive, what they find uncomfortable, what they don't like. And it's fine if they take that onto themselves. But when they try and tell other people, no one's like happy with that. I don't think anyone would feel happy with someone telling them how to enjoy their entertainment.
I have something to say about that. And actually, guys, I do see a bunch of other good comments, and I plan to get to them. So no worries. I see some of them.
A lot of fantastic comments.
Just on this one, he gives an example, or he or she gives an example. For example, people having issues with shippers, you know, and how certain types of fans engage with the medium. And it's like, well, if that's what they like to do, maybe they don't have problems with what they're doing. Maybe they blow it out of proportion. Okay, I get that. But but if that's how they like to engage and consume with the medium, that itself is fine. It's kind
Yeah.
of if
Yeah.
it hampers other people's enjoyment. And in terms of something I've always kind of like realized more and more with time is that no one really likes to be preached to. No one likes
Yep.
to be
Yep.
told what not to do. Like that's not the
Yep.
way to go about it. It's like, okay, you're wrong because A, B, and C. Well,
Yeah.
that okay, but you're not going to convince them that way.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
it's not going to work. No one likes to
Especially
be.
if you're telling them like this is how you should feel. It's always, I find, speaking back to the like education point of view, it's much more helpful to be like, so this is how I feel about the series and this is why I'm going to do A, B, or C. Like I'm either going to watch it and criticize it or I'm going to not watch it and just leave it alone, but like this is how I feel. And if you just say like this is how I feel and these are the actions I'm taking based on how I feel, no one can really criticize you. No one can really get mad at it. Like, if they get pressed over what you're doing, that's their problem. You can only control yourself and what you choose to do and what boundaries you choose to set. That's like, that's it.
If they want to let you live rent free in their head, that's up to them. They
want to pay rent for that. Yeah.
I want to go back to an earlier comment from Drax. He brought up there's also the problem of too much interpersonalization of media. It's good to be in a position where like, yeah, I care about this thing, but not to the point of my personal detriment.
Yeah.
That's actually something I've been thinking about. Like last night after, we talked a bit about this, I think the issue with the fans that want to gatekeep is because they might be over identifying with the medium. Like they might just be like, this is this thing that I've invested so much time into. I've, I know this stuff. I've earned it. I know the nuances these new fans don't. And as an example, because these tweets, they got ridiculous with certain different points they were bringing up, and we talked about this. One of the takes was like, if we keep letting this happen, the jocks who used to bully us and make us feel outsiders, or whoever these guys will take over the medium and make it theirs, and then we're the outsiders again on something that we built.
Yeah, that's like
we built.
That's always really funny, especially we were mentioning this if it's like Western fans, because it's like this is just like Japanese cartoons. Like, I'm sorry, I know you love it, but like you didn't build it. You're not drawing unless you like drew it or created the story. Like you didn't build this. I'm sorry, and that's totally fine. But like it's just an interesting perspective. Like it's interesting that people feel that they have this ownership of something that they had no part in creating. And, they might have had some part in maybe creating like a community or, expressing something. But like, as for the actual media, like you don't own it. I'm sorry, copyright included. So that's always just like an interesting perspective to say. I guess that kind of goes, is this the Addison Rae story time or should I push that? Should I punt that online?
1 second. I just want to see if there's another comment.
Yeah.
The Ishizoku reviewers incident is funny. In hindsight, the Foundation was basically like, wait, this is hornier than we thought.
That's what I thought of it. Yeah.
I mean, it was really funny because again, it's like, you guys didn't screen this, did you?
Yeah, exactly. That's where it's like, so you guys were fine with utilizing this for like medium horny, but when it got extreme horny, you're like, nope, this is too far.
This is now
this is our
hentai
line.
Horny. It's not a tease. It's legit like. Drax had said, I can make the argument redo of Healer is about the cycle of victimization, but then again, you can get things out of anything.
You could. Yeah, like you can make an argument for anything. And a lot of arguments are pretty valid in how they interpret it. One of the really funny comments I saw for Redo of a Healer was one dude kind of took Redo of a Healer's existence as like, this is like a punch in the face to all the people who call for censorship and who are like taking away our culture, like one of those comments that you kind of read. Yeah. But they're saying how it's like Redo of a Healer is anti-censorship. Meanwhile, the broadcast of Redo of a Healer is censored, which is kind of funny.
Yeah,
so,
although if you really want to watch it, and don't judge me here, if you really want to watch it uncensored, just go on YouTube within the first 2 hours of when it comes out. It'll be up for like a few hours.
That's funny to hear. I didn't know that.
No, and then on all the comments, all the people you see is just like, yeah, let's watch this so we can make the Twitter people angry.
It's so funny.
Everyone on Twitter is just like, okay, whatever. We're not really talking about it. But like, it is what it is. Let's see. What the what says you guys should actually watch the Scamboli video on redo of Healer. Enlighten us on what he says there. Is it good? Never mind. He says it because all he does is just explain what happened and shows the reactions to it, and it's funny.
Okay. So it's like experiencing redo of a healer in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, so I feel like the actual like issue of censorship is hard to solve. Like there's no answer, but it's not really completely tied to the fan base. And some people try to blame the translators. And like it's a lot more complicated. Like we read this brilliant this thread about localization from her name is Katrina L. I can't pronounce her last name. She's like a Japanese to English localization specialist.
I'll put it in chat if people want to read it.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's very informative. Like going on to that point about education, it definitely does educate you because she goes through first talking about context and language. Yeah. And then after giving you that, she goes into now like making choices as a translator, like who is, how do you kind of talk about ethics and morals? Like how do you make those decisions? Like who do you consider? Yourself, the audience, the client, and the client is one of the most important. But the truth is, in regards to censorship with those, it's the company, the publisher, that has the final say. It's not the translator. It's the publisher or the company because they have to kind of look out for themselves and their image, and they have to weigh, and it's interesting, they have to weigh what they'd get more backlash on for letting this thing slide or a vocal minority of fans that are just mad at them because they censored it versus like, I don't know, the whole world coming after them for letting this stuff show.
Yeah. And I think when it comes down to it, if I was in charge, I'm not going to be translating anything anytime soon, but I would definitely be like trying to translate it as closely to the original. But as you said, like, it's probably not even the person who's translating's call. It's probably the organization, the company that's in charge. And if they think that'll hurt the bottom line, because that's what it comes down to a lot, Yeah. I don't think Funimation took wrong show. I don't think Funimation took interspecies reviewers off because they thought because they were personally offended by it. I think they took it down because they thought it would hurt their investments or their brand image. Yeah. And that's what
especially because they didn't market it probably. They probably didn't know. They didn't market it how they should have, or they didn't know, and then they already kind of made a boo-boo. Here, What the What says, Redo of Healer definitely is supposed to be about the cycle of cruelty, but it's also fucking stupid and 100% also just someone's rape fantasy. So there you go. I mean, let's see. And then it might be a matter of people seeing how something works in the context of its own narrative.
Yeah.
And characters versus people seeing that kind of content problematic just for existing.
I mean, how many cases have we seen of... I don't want to keep bringing it up because I feel bad. This does live in my head rent-free, actually, is how many people have we seen called Attack on Titan fascist propaganda who have very clearly not read the series,
Yeah.
They just are like, what if they got to call and say like, hey guys, we need to censor Attack on Titan because it promotes fascist propaganda. And you're like, hey fam, I don't think it does based on all this stuff in the series, but like, what if in an alternate universe they made a big enough fuss, and then what if Crunchyroll or someone took it down?
Because that's a very like surface level thing when the show is clearly promoting, not even like sort of like war themes and the
war is bad.
War. Yeah, war's
bad. I mean, I always pull whenever I see it. It's always funny because whenever I see a tweet over saying like, by the way, guys, Attack on Titan fascist propaganda, in case you didn't know, it's like, I always see like at least 3,000 likes. And I'm like, who are these 3,000 people who are like behind this? And every time I see it, I have to pull out the same manga panel where a character literally says word for word, because it's Attack on Titan, they're not mincing words, genocide is bad. Like they have to like literally say like, hey guys, genocide is bad. And I'm like, I know you guys aren't reading the series because they're saying in it, like, guys, this is not good. What the what is trigger, by the way. I just see that in the corner. I just see in the corner where I'm like
triggered.
He's probably triggered.
Back to Attack on Titan.
Back to that.
Like I think it also with the fandom, is something with I think because a lot of casual fans, they'll watch Attack on Titan, especially because it's a popular show, and really look at it from the lens of entertainment. They're not really looking to look too much into the themes or kind of what it's saying. It's really just what's going to happen next and kind of following along in the plot and stuff like that. So it's not, they're not really going to look too deeply into, you know, hey, even though it's spelling it out sort of, war is bad. It's more like they're just going to kind of look at what's on the surface. Like, oh, this looks fascist. This is probably isn't good.
Yeah, they see like armbands, therefore fascist, which is interesting because you look at it for more than 5 seconds and you're like, wait, they're saying this is bad. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, oh, actually, you wanted to bring up your Addison Rae example. Is it still relevant? You can still bring it up. Kind of
is. So speaking of gatekeeping, I've experienced the other side. Maybe, I'm not sure if it's another side, but it is a side. So I'm sure like most people probably know of Addison Rae at this point. She's a very famous like social media influencer. One day she tweeted out BRB downloading Crunchyroll app. So obviously like she's going to be watching anime. And a lot of people got really outraged at her tweet because of that same mentality you were talking about, where they're like, I didn't get bullied for this just for you to make this a trend and make this popular. And I think that mindset is just like so ridiculous from every perspective possible. Like I responded to her tweet saying like, hey, hope you enjoy it. Like just ignore these people and have fun. Because in my head, I'm thinking, cool, if we get an influencer tweeting about anime, maybe that will somehow snowball into contributing towards more people watching anime, hopefully getting more support, because she's not watching it on an illegal streaming site. She's watching it on Crunchyroll, where, you know, we don't know how much money they give to people, but it is a legal source of streaming for anime. So it is in a way supporting the anime industry in some way. Your mileage may vary on how effective it is, but she's doing like it the right way in a way that supports people. Maybe that will encourage more people to get into it. So I said something like, hey, hope you enjoy it. Ignore all these comments. And a bunch of people who I'm assuming are younger based on the way they formulated tweets were like, she's problematic. She sucks. You know, I didn't get bullied for this just for her to come in and make this a trend. And I'm like, anime being popular is good for everyone. If the difference between your favorite anime getting a season 2 is Addison Rae tweeting about it to her millions of followers, what's the problem? You know, that's how I see it. But it is weird how some people were really presenting it as like, I don't want this famous celebrity to get in and make it cool because it wasn't cool when I watched it and because they didn't earn the right to experience this, which is so weird.
Yeah, I mean, like, I get it. Like, I mean, I totally agree that it's ridiculous, but I think I can get it because, like, when not the whole, like, oh, you know, I was bullied for this and you know, I've earned this and what are these fans? But I feel like when you, at least, I guess, for someone my age, when you grew up when anime wasn't popular or big or whatever, and it was like your own kind of little, like, secret, or it wasn't a secret, but it was kind of like something you had to yourself, and now it's expanding to like all these other people, and like, well, that's great, like on some subjective level in the back of your mind you're like, oh, well, you know, it was, now it's not my thing, now it's not like, you know, now I have to, I don't know, share it or whatever. But like, you, in those moments, and it's okay if you do feel like that on some level, I think that's human, you know, whatever. Sometimes it might make you a little uncomfortable, but I think it's also, you should try to check yourself and try to think objectively, like, and we made this point before, so I don't want to be repetitive, but you know, this is also good for the medium. And if you actually care about the medium rather than this being my thing, it's helping it grow. It's helping it more budget into shows, and it expand to other people that you could even probably at one point talk with your parents about anime and be like, hey, you know, now it's just totally mainstream.
It's just a medium. And I had many boomer moments, or like millennial boomer moments, when I was talking to people who were like, well, I don't want anime to just be a trend. And in the back of my mind, actually, I was tweeting it. I wasn't even thinking it. I'm like, if it wasn't for my generation popularizing Naruto, turning that into a trend, you guys probably wouldn't even be able to watch anime on like in such an easy way. You know, it hasn't just magically become popular. It's been popular in different pockets of time since its creation. You know, Akira, Ghost in the Shell, when those came out, those made it popular, and those kind of each have had their own impact on the Western market. Naruto, Pokemon, like Attack on Titan, all these different series have broken through the mainstream and have contributed to the popularity of the medium outside of otaku circles. So like it didn't just one day become a trend because someone on TikTok made a catchy JoJo song, you know? So the idea that like it just became popular and you're viewing it as a trend, like it's not a trend. It was never a trend. It's always just been a medium with different levels of popularity throughout time, you know?
It's just getting visibility now. Like it's just, you know, just because you weren't seeing it.
Yeah, just because you weren't alive when it was also visible 10, 15 years ago doesn't mean that it never was. And I think it shows that people who view it as like a trend or, you know, not to get too mean, but some people who make being an anime fan their personality, like I think they kind of need to take a step back and recognize like for some people, this is their livelihood. You know, they're animators, they're creators. Like the medium is their livelihood. It's not just about you keeping something obscure to yourself, even though it's natural to be like, this is my special thing. I like keeping it special. It makes me feel special. Like it's like a broader view of the whole thing.
I didn't want to bring this up again, and I'm not going to go into full detail because I brought this up on my Evangelion podcast with What the What. So if you do want to get the full story, you could watch that one. But there was this one comment, it's still in my head. It's living rent free in my head from this commenter on my Ava video. And he I think he felt threatened that newer fans, mind you, I'm not a newer Ava fan, but he thought, you know, like, oh, is this because of the Netflix dub that people are still talking about this anime? And he kind of came at me, and then I said like, oh, you know, like, well, you know, you shouldn't have I don't know, like I took it as like he has a problem with just Evangelion fans. Like, oh, he's like, mind you, I don't have a problem with Evangelion. I just feel like, you know, you're all talking about the same thing. It's just cute to see all of you talking about the same things when I've seen like 26 interpretations of the series, like before you were even out of diapers.
Yeah.
And I've watched 500 anime on my Mal, and I'm like, dude, why? Like, where is this coming from?
Yeah, like, what are you doing?
Like, it's like I've watched more anime than that. What have you been doing in 30 years?
Yeah.
But like it's not even about that. It's like they make it into this giant you know, dick measuring contest.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't need to be. You know, you could watch 100 quality anime and still have a lot more to say than someone that's watched 2,000 and, you know, has not a single original thought because they haven't like actually tried to engage with it. And if you don't want to, that's fine too.
Yeah. Addressing one of the comments that was just came because I want to differentiate kind of what I was saying. So it's not like attacking people who like take anime like personally and do make it like a huge part of their lives. Like obviously saying like we're streaming and like we're talking about anime on a Saturday. But they mentioned the Kage Pro 24. They said, I feel like one of those people who define their personality around anime, but like it's fun when other people show interest in it. Like, hell yeah, let me talk up to you about it. And I definitely agree. I think it's totally fine if you're like, this has a huge impact on me and it's going to like take up different aspects of my life. I think that's totally fine. It's just as you like the difference with what they said is it's like, you should let other people make it part of their lives. Don't say just because it's part of your life doesn't mean it can't be part of someone else's life.
Well, they also feel threatened, and this is the whole, I was bringing this up to you before about over-identifying with anime, and if that's all you have, right, and you see someone who is, you know, maybe a jock, whatever, someone that's successful at life,
someone successful.
And whether a celebrity, good example, successful, has everything going for them, you know, things are going well, have friends, whatever, but now, on top of that, they're now into your medium, your thing, your thing in the corner that's all you kind of had and it was special to you. But now they have that and your thing. And it's like,
and so it feels, and I do get it. I do really get it. I think actually this is like one of my like super galaxy brain thoughts that like I don't think anyone would care about, but I've thought of is like, I think one of the big backlashes to say like huge YouTube figures like Logan Paul and Jake Paul and all of the like jock popular people who were obviously popular in high school who then took on internet things. I think that's part of the reason people have such a pushback is like they don't like the idea of nerdy kind of things that they would use as escapism being conflated with like the people who were really successful in life. And I do think a certain level of that comes into like anime and video games. Like, you know, sometimes it's cool when an athlete loves anime, but if it feels just like a popular celebrity, then sometimes it's like, no, like this is my thing. You didn't earn it.
Listen, Shaw, we had to live through the dark ages.
We did.
I drew anime. I drew DBZ drawings in the corner while all those kids played around outside. I didn't know outside until I was a man. It was just.
And then cartoon hit, and it's like, nope, back inside.
Exactly. But it's whatever. I mean, I feel like I love anime. It's definitely a big part of my life, but it's not all there is to life. I think you should definitely take it as serious as you want to take it.
Yeah.
But don't let it kind of consume you into thinking you need to.
Don't let it consume you from the inside.
Yeah. It's always a balance. But like moving on, because we've kind of just been going over some of the similar things.
Yeah.
And like another example of how much anime has kind of come up in a crazy way is the Anime Awards. Like I know people have mixed feelings about it. I know it's not perfect. It's definitely still needs work. But they just aired this year's Anime Awards last night, and I thought it was an improvement. It was definitely, in terms of what won, it was not as offensive.
Yeah, because I remember last year, I even thought it was good last year when I was like, these are pretty good, but there were a few like very obvious like, what are you guys doing? I think the main one that people were pissed of was like Askeladd losing to Isabella for best antagonist. I think that was like the most egregious one, even though I like Isabella from The Promised Neverland. I love both, but I understand the outrage. But I didn't have any outrage this year. I didn't have any beef. I think a lot of even if my favorite didn't win, I think the person
they were strong. Yeah, the people they were already strong enough contenders, and then you were like, all right, it was like kind of neck and neck. It wasn't just like, oh, come on,
Yeah, and it's interesting because it might just seem connected because it just happened, but I think the gatekeeping idea does play into Crunchyroll Awards a lot, because you see a lot of people who are upset because their favorites didn't win or their favorites didn't get nominated, and their favorites are a lot more obscure in terms of popularity in the community. And so you do see some people who get annoyed because they're like, oh, well, like, why didn't my favorite win? And at some point you kind of got to be like, look, I'm sorry your favorite didn't get nominated, but a lot of people didn't like it that much. It might just be you. It might just be you liking it, go ahead.
Good. No, I mean, like, I was just going to add like a side comment. Like, I don't even have a right to say shit because I didn't vote. I forgot. So
I think you're still fine. I mean, you're definitely fine. I mean, so I think people.
But I meant like I wouldn't have a right to complain if my favorite didn't win. Because,
that's you can't like be fair about that. You should complain no matter what. You're like,
right, well, you need to listen. I'm fine that Kaguya won Best Girl. Okay, Kaguya is Best Girl. Although I thought Shizuru was gonna win.
Me too. I was like, this is Chizuru's year, because are they gonna try and do like, no sequels, like just new girls? And then I'm glad Kaguya won, as she should.
Yeah, and actually we have a different, and I'm sorry if I cut you off, so definitely finish your point if you still remember it. But we have an alternate take here saying, I think because it was better, it ended up being worse. At least years back, we could laugh at how bad it was, but now that it's just okay, I can't even do that.
Yeah, it did take some of the entertainment out of it because I can't complain. So I do kind of miss complaining that. So I'm kind of sad that I can't complain more, but I feel like credit where credit is due.
Yeah, like I feel like even like the annual ritual was for the AniTubers and everyone to kind of do their little spoof on the their commentary on the Crunchyroll Awards and how it was bad and that was just the norm. But now it's like we can't do that.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I get kind of annoyed when I see, I think there's like a lot of fair criticism you could have for like the process, but I always see people say like, oh yeah, Crunchyroll rigged the awards, so it's just like their shows win, they all these kind of things of like Crunchyroll as an organization sucks and they messed up the awards because my favorites didn't win. And I feel like there should be like a lot of credit where credit is due. Crunchyroll has continuously taken in community feedback every year. Like, it hasn't been the same every year. They've changed everything in terms of like adding more judges, changing the percentage of like judge point weight versus community point weight. They added in like tons of different representatives from the community. It's not just like the big AniTubers. Like, they've constantly reinvented the awards, and I think they should get recognition for that because they are obviously listening to people.
Yeah.
And I think I did have a few criticisms because when the awards first dropped, I thought it was very weird that there were no sequels in Anime of the Year. And I think that's kind of like an unwritten rule that they just like don't want to put sequels in Anime of the Year. But like it or not, I mean, a lot of times sequels are Anime of the Year. Like I don't know about you. I don't know if we actually talked about this, but
we did not. We didn't go too into the anime awards. We
no.
can do it now.
Yeah, that would be fun. But so I think the nominees for Anime of the Year were all like new shows. It was Izukin, Dorahedoro, Beastars from last year, which they had to do because Beastars, even though it came out in 2019, it wasn't legally available until 2020, so they grouped it in 2020. That's a mess. Yeah. Jujutsu Kaisen, Great Pretender. They had that one random one that probably shouldn't have been there. I don't even remember the name of it. Fuck is that name of that show?
You know, I will say though, I'm a little okay. I can't even say I'm peeved. It's just like with Jujutsu Kaisen winning when it's still airing.
That's the only issue. That is an issue.
I like it. Like I don't even feel like it wasn't deserved. So I'm not like really upset or anything. But it was just like it felt a little off. Like but that's still airing. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's weird. I think that is weird that they were like, yeah, it's still airing, but we'll throw it in. And I've always had.
They're saying Apare Ranman. Is that did I?
Yeah, Apare Ranman. So I have no idea where that. You did hear it was good. I haven't heard about it at all.
I've heard whispers. That it's good. Like you know, I was talking to my fiance last night and she pointed at the screen when it showed on the TV and she's like, "Oh, my friend's watching that." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I've heard that's good, but like no one in my circles is talking about it."
Yeah, my friend Maz watched it and I think he said it was like okay. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of times you hear like the underwatched shows, they kind of get a grumbling, like a positive grumbling where they're like, "Yeah, you got to watch this." It's like the Akudama Drive. That's the show that I've heard like people whisper about. And so I didn't hear about Apare Ranman at all. So I was like, this random show. But I mean, it looks weird to not see Kaguya season 2 in the Anime of the Year. I think most people who've watched it, I'm not going to say everyone loves it, but I think most people expected Kaguya season 2 to be there.
I forgot about it. And now that you say that, now I'm a little annoyed. Now I am a little annoyed because Kaguya season 2 was awesome.
And I think for many people, it's Anime of the Year. And, you know, I think it's weird to not have Haikyuu, but I expected at this point because a lot of times, like with Haikyuu, they leave off a lot of sports series. It's weird that they don't have Chihaya Furu season 3, but I understand it because it's not as popular. But like Kaguya season 2 is like very obvious as an Anime of the Year contender. Like it's weird.
It's up there, but maybe Kaguya isn't popular.
I think it is. If only because of Chica memes. The Chica memes make it so
But are you
popular.
sure it's not popular among like the Twitter sphere, but not popular among the general audience?
I think I used to think that until the Chica memes and then the other memes that have permeated like mainstream stuff. I think it's as close to being mainstream as like most comedies get. Like it might not be Jujutsu Kaisen Demon Slayer tier, but it is like up there more.
Yeah. Also, really, really quick plug. If you have not watched Haikyuu yet, go watch Haikyuu. If you need me to sell you on it, I have a Haikyuu video on my OniMaru channel that needs more views. So check that out and let that convince you.
Yeah. Anas Kawari, I think I said their name wrong, but they said people in our anime podcast, they said they were laughing at it being there, and that's as much as I know about it. So I'm glad my podcast is representing Apare Ranmai by saying, why is this here? So at least I'm on brand with my people. Like, what is this doing here?
Did you guys stream about it last night or?
We did not, but okay. I guess slight plug, we have the Our Anime Awards tonight for 2020 anime. So I'm going to be presenting for that. And that setup is very different because they have the jury, as in they pick essentially like 8 to 10 people to watch all of the shows and rank them. And then they have the popular vote. So it's just the community voting. So it's kind of like the Crunchyroll award process, but it's split up. So you get 2 different winners. Yeah.
And I got Delph here saying, personally, I thought Apare Ranman was great, but it just didn't get a lot of buzz. So
okay. That's cool to hear that some people did like it. Because it's not even that I heard it was bad. I just didn't hear anything.
Delph, you never told me about that show. What the fuck, man? And then see, that's the thing. I don't remember much about the show aside from the memes. It was good, but Kaguya. I think this is Kaguya.
But I do think I think that is kind of fair though, because Kaguya is a comedy. So if the memes are popular, then that is something.
And like humor, comedy, in anime in any medium is the most. The biggest toss up. It's so subjective, but I think Kaguya's comedy is super top tier, especially its production. It's awesome.
Yeah, the directing was really good. And so I think in terms of my opinion on the way the Crunchyroll system works is I think if you're not going to have sequels in anime of the year, if that's just your unwritten rule that you want it to be 2020 only anime, I don't agree with the perspective, but I understand it, then you should have a best sequel category. At least just say, split them up and be like, hey, look, these are the best sequels. These are the best of the year. Because it's really weird to not recognize series that I think most people would agree are anime of the year contenders just because they're sequels. And I think we're going to find that it's going to be really put to the test this year, when I think one of the biggest shows that will air this year is Attack on Titan airing now. Imagine all the buzz we've been talking about, everything we've experienced. Then you get to the end of the year and Attack on Titan isn't in anime of the year, when it's we've been talking about this for months. It's the biggest show of the decade.
Final season. It's the final season. It's been since 2013 in the making, and that'd be insane if I don't see it as a contender, because they could put it in a category.
They will put it in categories, but then if they don't put it in anime of the year, even as a nomination, I'm not even saying it has to win, but we'll be talking about it in the same year that the manga ends. This will be the Attack on Titan year. Just spoilers for everyone. This will be Attack on Titan year. Yeah. And I've already heard grumblings about another season coming out. Another season's going to be announced. So they're going to pull a Gintama and have the final season.
I'm just laughing at what now went on his Twitter so he wouldn't be censored. So it's hilarious.
They just deleting his comments. That's really funny.
Yeah, Gintama definitely is something I need to catch up on.
The movie for Gintama comes out, but I mean that's not going to get nominated, so I'm not pretending. But
I want to bring it back real quick to the community, the topic about gatekeeping in the community. It's so interesting that we have this opportunity to weigh in, to shape the awards. That we have all these, again, different takes, and it kind of unifies us in a way to either hate on the Crunchyroll Awards or think hey, or maybe love it, or think this needs some work, and kind of how we feel about reformatting it. Hey, they should include sequels. And it's that stuff that brings us together, because it's all kind of a shared experience, because it's not so much about, it's you kind of getting validated for the experience that you had. You thought this was great, and now seeing that recognition on stage, this won an award, all these people thought the same thing, this was great.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are a lot of fair criticisms for the system. I already just expressed a criticism I have with their system that obviously seems to favor new shows over sequels no matter what. But I do think that there's a difference between criticizing the awards because your favorite show didn't win and criticizing the awards because you don't like the system. To a certain extent, you got to recognize your favorites will not always win, especially in something that is based around a popularity contest. And I think a lot of people were annoyed that Jujutsu Kaisen won because it's obviously the most popular show right now. But I hate to break it to some people, but a lot of people think that it has the quality to back up the popularity, and just like Demon Slayer last year. And I think that's totally valid. I like Jujutsu Kaisen. It wasn't my favorite in the group, but I really like it, and I think it's a fair winner.
I mean, I was watching the new episode last night after the Anime Awards, and I was and it did this crazy thing with the animation. I was like, okay, this is good.
And I think that's super fair, especially when, I don't know how you feel about this, but I really like that Demon Slayer and now Jujutsu Kaisen are kind of reinvigorating just passion for anime from an outside point of view, with the way they have this explosive. They have these explosive scenes with cool animation, and then it draws a bunch of people in because it's such a spectacle. And then it's kind of it feels like something to celebrate. I like that we have different series that are so big that it feels like a celebration every week. And I think that's really cool to honor that.
And I feel again, it leaves, the characters are I don't want to oversimplify them, but they're simple enough that people can kind of get into them. If they're newer fans, get a taste of anime, root for them, and kind of find something there that I don't know, can easily make them part of the conversation, because then veteran fans watching it, new fans watching it, it's hey, we have something to talk about, because there's nothing better to bond over, to just be you're at work with a rando, he's just kind of there, you guys have nothing to talk about, and then he's suddenly like, oh, you watched that? Oh, I watched that
Mhm.
too. And then suddenly 6 hours later, you're bonding over it.
Yeah, and it's so exciting.
And then I missed a comment early up here. It said, but I also think it's important to push up new shows because fans of a show are probably going to watch the sequels if they have already watched season one, but your compliments. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think
we
that's
talked
fair
about
too,
that.
because I definitely don't have an issue with just choosing new shows. Like, I don't have a problem with that. I just think they should be a bit more clear about saying, like, hey guys, we left sequels off. Like, just be upfront, because the way it currently looks is like they're saying something like Kaguya season 2 is an anime of the year material, when I think a lot of people aren't going to read in between the lines like I am, because they probably have a better use of spare time, and they're they're not digging in and realizing, like, okay, they're just not putting in sequels. And if they just made it clear and said, like, hey, we're not putting in sequels, I think that would clear a lot up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they just got to be upfront, and then that way, because again, that's what you do with most of these things. You establish the rules up front, and then people are cool with it, and that's kind of it. You like, all right, this is the rules. Or maybe like best anime sequel of the year.
Yeah, I think that would be cool too. Someone asked Man X Man. I wonder if it's like Hunter x Hunter where the X is silent, but they said
Man.
Do you think Crunchyroll might not put in an anime because of controversy? I don't think so. I don't think the controversy is that widespread that like corporations care. Like we were talking about before, how like if stuff gets too hairy, they're not going to care. Or no, if things do get hairy, they're oh, it is silent. So I don't think Attack on Titan falls into that category. So I think Attack on Titan will be fine, and they're not going to shy away from it. Like, they've already had Attack on Titan in previous awards, but I think this will be the year. Like, if we don't see Eren in Best Protagonist, it might get a bit weird.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely think it's too much of a big show that Crunchyroll has marketed for years.
Yeah, Crunchyroll, they still hold it. Also, I don't know if you saw this. I saw this tweet. I don't know if it's true or not because I don't know the sources, whatever. I just saw it on Twitter. Attack on Titan is like the most popular TV show like in the United States. All like not just cartoon, not just like anime, like TV show, period.
Listen. Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, let me send it. Let me send it
on Netflix or
including Netflix. Like Game of Thrones was on the list. Like it's also not on Netflix anymore. I'm kind of salty about that. They got to add back.
I only believe that because I have two friends who like growing up, like they've never been into anime, and I always was into anime. And so like I only was able to get them into like one anime in my whole life. But then later, out of nowhere, one day they started talking to me about Attack on Titan. They were like, "Hey, you watch Attack on Titan? That shit's crazy." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, and why does it? The bookmark feature on Twitter could use some work. But I gotta find the tweet. But it's just like straight up said like it had so many like mainstream shows, and it's the most popular show like just in the country, period. At least for this week, not for like a long period of time, but like for this week, it's like number one. So that's like a new level of big that we don't see that often.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just trying to back up on some comments. Wouldn't it be crazy if Chainsaw Man ends up stealing Attack on Titan's thunder?
Okay.
Bit of a spoiler. Next week's podcast is all Chainsaw Man.
Oh, that's cool. I still have to finish Chainsaw Man, but I know what happens.
I actually still have to finish too. I'm going to catch up this week so I can be ready for next week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let me show you this tweet. I'm just sending it on Discord. But
yeah. Let me just check that out.
Yeah, but I would say like if Chainsaw Man beat out Attack on Titan, I would be if it gets a good anime, I would be totally fine with that. But if Attack on Titan doesn't get nominated, it's going to be kind of weird because it just feels so inaccurate to the year of anime we've had. That's what like
my God, it's above Game of Thrones. What?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, I guess I don't know what that says. Like, Game of Thrones is over a couple years, but like.
Yeah. Let me just look at.
But it's over like Cobra Kai. That's a big deal. Like Cobra Kai is huge.
Cobra Kai is huge. I watched all of season 3 the day it came out. That's dedication.
I like Cobra Kai. I just started watching it. It's really funny.
I just started watching it in November too. Like I caught up to 2 seasons. Like I didn't even want to watch it. I watched an episode, caught up so quick, and then I was just like, God damn it! Now I have to wait like a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
And, it's so good. I actually do have a Cobra Kai background. just
Oh,
to
that's
rep
dope.
it. Let's see if I can pull it up. Boom. There you go. I'm part of
Cobra guy. I love that.
the dojo. Let's see. Are there any other comments that you want to highlight?
Um,
Oh, actually, so the next thing I did want to bring up. So we talked about the Anime Awards, but let's bring it back to the beginning of where this whole conversation
the
started,
beginning.
which was that tweet about gatekeeping. And funnily enough, and we were talking about this original tweet, and I really want to get into this because I'm interested about your take.
Yeah.
It was spurred on by an article called
Yeah.
the uncomfortable hypocrisy of Kill la Kill.
Yeah.
You know, and I clicked the link. I read the article. Pretty fair, pretty standard. Nothing super overblown. Nothing offensive. Nothing kind of making
no cancel. No hashtag cancel Kill la Kill. No.
Yeah.
No
like
Kill la Kill is over party. None
the
of
guy
that.
gave a very fair point. Like he even said right at the beginning, like I love Kill la Kill. He listed everything great about it, everything phenomenal about it, but just these things like. It's kind of promoting a mixed message. It's saying the gist was he was saying Kill la Kill does this thing where it makes it feel like it's about female empowerment, but then the things it does and its camera angles kind of muddle that message or just go straight against that and make it seem like no, like you are still going to be objectified, so there is no female empowerment or consent or whatever, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. It's a very interesting case, and I've just recently rewatched Kill la Kill, so I cannot feign ignorance and say like, oh, it's been a bit since I've seen it. But I think knowing the Trigger kind of philosophy, a lot of times people are like, is Trigger, when Trigger or Gainax make series, they're like, are they doing one thing? In this case, are they being female empowerment or are they doing exploitative, sexually exploitative views? One or the other. If you ask Trigger, their answer is no, it's both. We're going to show the sexuality in a way that is empowering, but also we're still kind of creeps about it and we're going to show panty shots or something,
Because that's who we are. That's our roots.
That's who we are. Like they don't like pretending that it's ever one or the other. They always do both. And it can come across as contradictory and it can come across as hypocritical. But the Trigger motto just does not give a shit. Like the Trigger motto doesn't really care. And it has such an authenticity and like bluntness about it that you kind of have to respect it. Or at least I do. Because I think we both love Kill la Kill. I think we'd both be lying if we didn't say some scenes were a bit off-putting, both intentionally and unintentionally.
Ragyo and her daughter.
That's an interesting one because that one is like, the first time you see it, you're kind of like, the fuck is going on? And then the more you're developed, you're like, oh yeah, they're like taking this seriously. Like this is actually like a sexually abusive relationship. Like that's what's going on. They're not dressing it up as this. But like some of the scenes prior, like the first episode, it's when Senketsu wants to get put on by Ryuko, it's really weird and like a really creepy scene. Yeah. So I think it is both. Like I think it shows if I wanted to kind of sell it, I would say Kill la Kill takes into consideration the exploitative nature of revealing clothes and sexuality, but also promotes a message that you can overcome that and become comfortable in your own body. Yeah, I think it is both.
Yeah, that's a really, really good take. That's an interesting take because I love Kill la Kill, but when I read this, I was just like, should I question these things? 'Cause I remember back then, and if sorry to the viewers if I didn't give any context for Kill la Kill, if you for some reason haven't watched it, whatever. Anime that streamed on Crunchyroll back in 2013, was pretty big at the time. Aired from I think fall 2013 to beginning of 2014. Don't ask me how I remember that. 25, 26 episodes. It was done by Studio Trigger. It was one of their first full-length anime. Yeah,
it was the team who made Gurren Lagann they had left Gainax and they'd created Studio Trigger, and I think this was their first full TV series. So this was a big deal.
And it was completely original. No source material, just straight to the screen, created for the screen. So and I was watching it, the Simulcast weekly when it started, and I remember when the first episode came out, like the controversy was over Senketsu kind of forcing himself onto Ryuko, which was kind of similar or reminiscent or whatever of sexual assault.
Yeah,
And
the wording is creepy. The wording is like, I'll force you to put me on, which is like, yeah, that's sus.
And I found that out like maybe 5 or 3 episodes later. Like it was something that totally went over my head, didn't realize it. And I probably felt like the fans, like the guy that we're talking about here, that like, why are people blowing this out of proportion? Like I want to be like, unlike him, I want to be sensitive to them, but like, you know, is it this? Like I didn't feel like I knew enough to kind of, you know, think of it that way. Yeah. And I was questioning again, is it a gag, or you shouldn't joke about these things? Is that appropriate? So I wasn't sure. And I still watched all of Kill la Kill within the back of my mind thinking like, you know, some things, is it actually towing a line that shouldn't be towed or whatever? Yeah. And at the end of the day, I still fully enjoyed Kill la Kill, loved it. You know, I was excited for the OVAs when, you know, they were going to come out a few months later. So, you know, I have fond memories of it. But when I read this article, I was like, I didn't know. I was still reading it because I didn't want to feel like I'm invalidating other people's experiences. If the show, you know, you can't argue, like it's hard to argue that it wasn't doing this. And then like, how do you defend that? And my fiance started debating me and saying like, well, listen, I think they objectify the men too in that show. They do. And she said a similar thing to you, which is at the end, like, I feel like the whole thing is about being comfortable in your own skin, and everything else was being just done as a gag or in that way to kind of play up the point at the end that it just, you have to just be comfortable with yourself. Yeah. That's how she took it.
Yeah, and I think Kurunuma, she brings up a really great point that says there's nothing wrong with constructive criticism of a series, and it's not always cancel this. And I think that's what's evident in that article and what we're saying. Like, we might not agree. We might agree with some parts, but, you know, it's cool to have these conversations about this instead of just jumping to extremes and saying, this thing makes me uncomfortable or this thing makes other people uncomfortable, so we need to erase it. Like, it needs to be removed.
But now, so that's one extreme. Yeah. Here's the other extreme where it's bad. The guy who made this tweet, he read that article, which was not offensive, which totally like was articulate, made those points, was fair, and totally said, if you don't feel comfortable with it, don't watch it, you know, and if you and that's okay. And if you can stomach it, watch it. And that's how you kind of cater, like, who do you recommend it to and how you recommend it. You know, if you know that it's not for someone, then you just don't recommend it, and that's it. Yeah. But this guy that did this tweet read the article, and even though the author of it worded it like this, he just was like, no, I don't want to hear it. Yeah. I don't want people to engage with anime like this. I don't want them to even, like, why are they even bringing this stuff up? Like, just why?
It's really funny how that turns around, and it's the people who are, well, say this guy who is like, I don't want any part of anime censored because other people are uncomfortable with it. He's uncomfortable with other people being uncomfortable and sharing their thoughts, and has somehow gone full circle and is trying to censor other people engaging in anime. So he's taken on the position he's supposed to be against because he can't handle this person's opinion.
Yeah, he can't handle people trying to critically engage with it in a way that's not just, hey, this is just my fantasy and my entertainment. There was some tweets that said that, like, I don't want this stuff in my fantasy or in my escapist media, you know. Yeah, and we're trying to escape daily life. We're trying not to be reminded of this stuff. We just want something we enjoy, and that's fine. I mean, like, a certain level of escapism is cool. Like, we all need it. Like, I had a shitty work week, you know. Like, it was fucking exhausting, and I could use a nice cold one and watch some anime, and that's good. And I don't need to think too hardly about it. That's totally fine. Yeah. And media discourse exists for a reason. Anyways, sorry, Shak.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that too. Like, it comes kind of back to, like, the same guy's point. It's kind of like, he wants to tell people, if you're uncomfortable with something, just don't consume it, and don't complain about it, is the undertone. He's like, don't complain about my escapist media. But he should, if I could give some unsolicited advice to this random stranger who doesn't care, I would tell him, look in the mirror and be like, hey, if you don't like the discourse, you don't have to consume it, and you don't have to respond to it, and you don't have to engage in it. You can stay in your escapist world, and you can just view media without engaging with people who might think differently than you. And you guys can both live happily coexisting without interjecting with each other. Both can exist, you know? And
But
you might be happier that way.
But I think, and I saw some other tweets before this big tweet that exploded. I think he was talking about censorship all along with other things, with Japanese video games,
Yep,
other things. So it's the fear of, yeah, I can live in my world and I can do my thing and I can ignore all of this, but then I can't ignore it if my stuff's getting censored and I want my full experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is also fair because I saw some of his tweets were calling out how, was it like Sony was censoring some Japanese games? And I think those are two like completely different issues. Like you can say, hey, I found some parts of Kill la Kill kind of uncomfortable, but I still love it. And that's a bit different from companies changing the source material for whatever reason. I think it's really fair to complain about that. I think that's like actually worth, I'm not going to say actually as if the other thing, whatever, his opinion, but like, you know, there is a lot to complain about. Like, why are you changing the content of this? You know, we're using our buying power as a consumer to say like, hey, we want the uncensored version of this. That should be available. That's totally fair. But it also comes down to consumerism and capitalism, as we talked about. Like, they feel like they're making those business decisions because it'll make them more money, which is unfortunate. But you know, I think
that's an issue to take on with the company, and that's not the fan base, pretty much.
Exactly, it's a company issue,
not the community, and that's, you know, and they got to do them. And again, if you have a problem with them, write a letter, you know, and tell them
don't buy it. Yeah,
you know, release the censored version for, you know, and release the uncensored version, and I don't know, we'll pay premium. Okay, incentive for the company. We're like, okay, you'll pay premium. Here you go, have at it.
Yeah.
But again, it's a complex issue that can't really easily be solved. And if it does feel like we're going around in circles, there's many parts to it. Yeah. Let me see if I could answer a few other things. And I think we covered what we wanted to say about Kill la Kill. Essentially, what I was driving towards is if you don't feel comfortable with a Kill la Kill or a Made in Abyss.
Yeah, because that's been our one. Yeah. And I've also had this a lot, especially with a series I very much enjoy but have a lot of issues with. We've talked about it before, like with Monogatari. Like, some of the fan service I find uncomfortable, but I have come to terms and come to recognize that, you know, if I find something uncomfortable in a series, it's not my place to tell other people that they can't consume it, they can't enjoy it, nor for me to judge them as a person because of what they enjoy. You know, a lot of people don't have issues with the fan service in Monogatari, even though I do. And some people have a lot of issues with the fan service in Kill la Kill, even though I don't have an issue with that. Yeah. Neither of us are wrong or right. You know, we just have different opinions on it. And it's not our place to tell people how they are supposed to feel about media.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, too, it's tough. But like I don't even want to use this argument, but they're drawings. That's
we always come down to it.
Like it's you know, it becomes an argument whether it is an actual reflective of real life, but then that goes into the whole video games cause violence argument, and it's that whole thing again. And that's, you know, maybe more studies need to be done on that, but we're not going to be the ones to solve it. I'm just going to go through some other comments here. It's a very Imaishi thing to mess up both ideas, empowerment and that Satsuki Ragyo scene. Still great, though. I think there's a similar argument for what the Eldians stand for in Titan. Okay. You can comment if you want. I think
it's a bit different. I think both of those are a bit different because we're not really sure what the message of the Kill. We are kind of confused at the messaging behind Kill la Kill having both like empowerment and exploitative scenes, and that's why I think it can be both, showing the exploitative nature and showing the empowerment aspect and how they can coexist. I think that's a bit different from the Eldian thing in Attack on Titan, but I know other people feel differently. I just don't necessarily agree on that. I think they're a bit different cases.
Yeah. And then like here, I think they're saying that people try to censor the series that make them uncomfortable because they see it as morally wrong.
Yeah, and that's where like you were coming into play with this with you know, it is a drawing, you know, bringing it to a real life example. There's a huge difference between sexualization in a cartoon, which is, you know, concerning a not real person, you know, a cartoon is not real. Someone is not getting hurt through that. And say, you remember that Cuties issue?
Yeah.
You remember that? That's people had issues with that because they found that morally wrong, because they were saying, even if the point of the film was to show how hurtful sexualization of children are, real children are still getting sexualized in the process of trying to prove that point. Therefore, they still have an issue, even if the point that the movie was trying to make was self-aware. So that's where you come into difference, where you're like, okay, maybe people don't want cuties to be shown because they don't want the real children being sexualized to be hurt. That's an argument. But that exists differently from saying, you know, Kill la Kill has uncomfortable sexualization, and it makes me uncomfortable because I think it's morally wrong, but no one is really getting hurt in that process. We're not talking about real people. So it's a bit of a different comparison.
Yeah, and I feel like I kind of once came across that too. I'm trying to remember what there was a movie I watched a long time ago when I was a lot younger called, I'm just trying to remember. It's called Towelhead. And it had a scene where this underage girl, and she was getting sexualized by like her neighbor, and it was just very like uncomfortable, and I was a lot younger and I didn't know how to feel about it, because again, like I'm like, this is a child actor and I get what it's trying to do in terms of themes or whatever, but in real life, even though she looked like that, she was actually like 20. So
so that would probably be like a good in-between case of like they're showing the message without hurting someone in the process or perceived hurting someone. That's where it would be like an in-between thing. And it still could make people uncomfortable, but like that's a difference of like how they're not actually hurting someone in the process.
Yeah. And I think we've kind of covered everything. I'm just going to like click on this one and a few more comments, unless you have something else you want to bring up, Sha.
No, I think
to be honest, I don't mind the censorship that much, because a lot of the time media that resorts to stuff that gets censored ends up having those things as the main attraction and overall end up being not that good. I think that's a good point. I think that's the point earlier I was trying to say about when the main thing is titillation, or that's the main draw. It's like, okay, that's not really doing much for the story being good and being cohesive, a cohesive kind of experience, unless that is the main thing you're looking for.
But then I would wonder, I think I see it in the case that you would bring up of, say, like Interspecies Reviewers or like Redo of a Healer, like those shows. But I wonder, like, what if they censor something like Berserk with like Guts' backstory, or like The Eclipse with Casca, where those are like major plot points that drive the series, but are not the like obvious main focus. Yeah. If someone removed that, which has like crucial characterization or world building or narrative focus, if someone determines that as like, we should remove that because it's uncomfortable, like where would you stand on that? That gets kind of tricky.
I mean, I wouldn't, but then it serves a story. I don't know.
Yeah.
Golden Age arc, best arc, but
let's go.
It's really, it's part of the story, and it elicits a feeling. It's there to elicit a feeling of anger or kind of loss, or you kind of feel like how Guts feels, during that moment. So it's hard, because then that would take away from the story and what it's eliciting, why it's such a strong reaction, where most people I've talked to about that, feel the same way.
But then you even get weirdos. I saw some dude who had the, I will just say the panel of Guts and Casca. No, not Guts. The panel of Griffith, Femento, and Casca in that scene, what was going down. Not going to spoil. They got that tattooed on their leg.
Yeah. So to each their own.
Yeah. So like maybe that guy should censor that scene from his body. Like, please don't do that. But there are some people who are like, respond to it. Maybe they're trolls about it. I don't know. But they have like a different reaction to it in a kind of somewhat disturbing way.
That's you can't account for all those people. Like if they want to take it in that way and whatever, I don't think the source material needs to be censored. It's kind of when people take an already like an innocent icon or some visual and kind of morph it into something that represents something else or gives it a different association, then that's kind of on them, or it's kind of should be separated.
Yeah.
But I don't want to open a can of worms since we're kind of like almost done here. But what do you think? And because I saw comments, I think it was about Berserk. I think it was spurred on by the new Smash characters that were announced this week.
Who were announced? I didn't check.
Pyra and Mithra from Xenoblade.
Oh, cool.
They're a 2-in-1 character.
Oh, that's cool. I'm not familiar with them, but that's cool.
But I don't know. But then I saw a whole other thread about like, it was talking about Miura, the author for Berserk, being actually like a weirdo, or maybe like he used to draw, I don't know if it was him or someone else, that he used to draw porn or hentai in the past, with certain questionable things. And even though he doesn't do that anymore, it's like, should you be questioning like, even though like they're not producing that anymore, should you be questioning that author's works based on what they did before? Or as an example, like Made in Abyss, like Made in Abyss has some stuff that's like, oh, okay, you know, I hope this isn't like a fetish or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, or even in the case of what happened with the Rurouni Kenshin manga artist, like there's stuff that's just come up in the community that makes you kind of, not in the community, but in the anime medium, that makes you question, like, should you be questioning who makes these works, or should you still be separating them? Like,
Yeah, and that's interesting because you can use the example of the Kenshin mangaka who was found with, you know, CP, like real life CP. I'm not sure how that gets censored or whatever, but like,
yeah,
you know, he was found with illegal materials at his place. And if you look at Rurouni Kenshin, there is no sexualization of minors to be found. Like, you don't find it at all. That content is not expressed through that work at all. So you would never put two and two together. Meanwhile, you could say maybe people do draw like weird hentai before they work on their main series. But if you don't find that present in the main series, like, should you hold that against them? I don't think you should. I think there should be a separation. Also, by recognizing, like, you know, let's say they draw the weirdest hentai when they're teenagers. Now they're like 30, 40, they're working on their main series. Why would we hold that against the two, especially if they're not found in the main stuff? Like, we've all done and said weird shit when we're kids that we don't want to be held, that we don't find present in our real life work. You know, we're not the same person we were. We don't have the same interests. We don't have the same background. We don't have the same, you know, affect. So I think it's very different. But
yeah, and I think it also removes it removes the thought that people have the capability to grow, to change, to reflect. But the problem is, we're never going to be privy to that. We're never going to know them on a personal level. So I think,
don't know them.
To be fair to the people that are trying to cancel them, even though that's not the right move, they're never going to be able to confirm that. So they can only go on their initial suspicions, hunch / evidence.
Yeah.
Let me just address this one comment. There are exceptions, but for example, the vast majority of ecchi anime is just trash, but Monogatari is an exception.
And everyone will have their own exception. I think it's fair to note that we all have our own rules and set of, you know, these are our lines, but this one show can be our exception for whatever reason. And I think a lot of people do have exceptions, but that's what's tough, is that someone could be like, here, I don't like A, B, and C, but this one show is my exception, and our exceptions might not line up all the time. Like, for some person, Redo of a Healer might be their exception, and we might all see it as like revenge porn trash. But to them, they're like, no, this has like value to me that I find meaningful. And it's kind of tough to tell them, like, it's not our place to tell them and say like, no, it's still trash.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, at that point, you're kind of repeating the cycle of cruelty.
Yeah.
And then, to be fair for the movie, though, it wasn't just that children were being sexualized in the movie. It was way too sus with its presentation of that sexualization and just how much time they spent on it. Is this the Made in Abyss movie?
No, this is Cuties.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going too far back that now.
It could go either way, though, depending on your perspective. But yeah, no, I mean, there is always going to be the issue of like how they execute it. But, you know, when you know that's the intention, then it's like, okay, we have issues with your intention and your execution.
What about this one? Josofo.
I've heard of that one. I've heard of that.
I never even heard of this. What if you change?
I think that's so weird. I think it's so weird. It was like, so they, in the Dragon Maid dub, they just made a joke that was like no correlation between the original subtitles and this. They're like talking about Gamergate and the patriarchy and like making some kind of like weird, like they put in a weird joke like that. And my issue is they're not making that joke. It's that joke had no purpose to be in that scene. Like, that's not what they're talking about in that scene. Like, they really just put it in out of nowhere.
Yeah,
so
that is a little too overt with pushing an agenda. It's a little
that's weird. That's like, you know, that's the localization issue we were kind of talking about, you know, it just has no place being there.
I mean, I guess it could be a leap, but maybe they were trying to capture something as similar, and the only way to localize it and make it as relatable would be to present that. But if you're saying even in the original context, it wasn't even about that, then that's just...
Yeah, like I looked into the original context and it had nothing to do with that. Like, I could almost see that being something in like Steins Gate. Like in Steins Gate, they make some Star Trek reference, you know, because they were trying to show something being really nerdy, and some of the Japanese examples they had wouldn't have translated over for English as well. But saying like making a Star Trek reference, or they made the cake is a lie, the Portal reference.
Yeah, I love Portal.
So they use those references in the English dub for Steins Gate. I think that's good localization because that's the kind of content that they're trying to portray. But it's not like they just randomly were like Gamergate, patriarchy, whatever.
Yeah, I've seen some weird stuff like that sometimes in like some localization subs. And again, there's things that are a leap and there are things that are understandable. It's how you toe that line. And I think I'm going to end it with this last set of comments because I think it's a good point. Yeah, Berserk is another exception, but like most shows with edgy scenes are not that good and only get popular because of them being edgy. If censorship ends up motivating writers to depend less on grabbing attention by being controversial and more on writing a good story, then I'm on board. I mean, I think that's a good way to think about it. If they don't rely on that and just focus on the story, but it depends. It depends on what story they're trying to build. If it needs to be edgy or it needs to include that content in order to sell you on the world, then okay. But if it's just there to be there, you want to say something?
I was just going to point out another comment by Kurunuma. She made it a bit ago. She was saying, I think sometimes it's not always the fear of the cartoons, but what real life creatures they stir. And that's like a whole can of worms that we've kind of referenced of like, how much does fiction impact reality, and as you said, more studies to be done on that. But I think it is tough because you don't want fiction to impact reality. But since we don't really have a good case to say that like certain things in fiction that people see they'll want to implement in reality, except for the one dude who wants to get a sexual assault scene tattooed on his leg, kind of weird. Don't know why you're doing that. Sorry. Besides that, I don't see a lot of people misinterpreting this and saying, this show is portraying this thing, therefore it's good.
Because people have to realize, or at least make an effort to acknowledge that fiction is informed by reality. It is not divorced from it. And I just realized I never brought up this point, and I do not want to make this longer if I don't have to, but a lot of people act, and with the whole SJW thing, the incel, the whole controversy we talked about earlier, that's kind of on both sides. But from the one side that thinks reality does not belong in my escapist media, on that side, they act like Japanese culture is, this thing it's completely divorced from political ideologies, liberal agendas, social activism. Like that doesn't exist in Japan. That's what the belief or the assumption is. They misconstrue it to like anime. It has no place in anime. The people that are putting it in there, the main agents that are causing this is the Western fan base that's blowing it out of proportion. And now it's suddenly an anime because they're trying to cater to them, which if you were watching the Anime Awards, them embracing overseas fans is very new. They're still...
It is new.
They barely do not... They still think of their main target audience is the Japanese fan base. That is who they're catering to. Considering the Western audience and the overseas fans, that is just a very, very foreign, literally, and new concept that they're just now embracing.
Yeah, I'd say that comes along with streaming and the internet. But like before then, like for the most part, Japan does not really give a shit about us. Like they do not care. That's probably progressively changing as the markets have increased. But
as money speaks,
as the money, it always comes down to money. But I think the idea that like Japan doesn't really give a shit, which is always important to remember. At least for now, at this point in time, Japan probably does not care that much about you unless your money talks more than other countries.
Yeah. And not to get overly political, but just back to the point about politics. Not that I know like a lot, like I'm not an expert on Japanese culture. I know the little that I do know, but I saw a really interesting thread a long, long time ago from a Japanese person that was like born and raised there. And he was like speaking about it, that again, he was calling out anime fans that think it's completely divorced from politics and ideologies when it's written all over it. Like even in Miyazaki's films, like he literally uses that as an outlet to, talk about these things, or even in Evangelion with Anno kind of addressing certain things that he was influenced by the kind of the political climate.
I mean, you look to, just to add on.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, just 2 points. Yeah, like you look to all the big series, you look to all the big ones. I mean, the big directors, Satoshi Kon, Paranoia Agent, Perfect Blue,
Yeah.
political references. You got Ikuhara with Penguin Drum, references a real life terrorist attack in Japan.
Yeah.
Like, they have politics and they have real life events that shape their art just like we do. So sorry to cut off your point.
No. All I was gonna say was that he was, and this person's words, and I trust them if they have lived in the culture. They said that it's just that Japanese people, in their culture, they're not very vocal about they have their beliefs, they have their leanings, but they're not very vocal about it because the culture doesn't encourage it. So politics ends up being this, they described it as so personal that the only people that know about it are the people in your immediate family that live in your house.
Yeah, so like not even your cousin. You don't get the angry uncle at Thanksgiving. You don't know.
And even then, they don't feel comfortable about speaking about it with among each other. Like, they don't say who they voted for. They just kind of like,
yeah.
It's that, like, they keep it that close to them. But just because that's the case, that they're not vocalizing it, doesn't mean it's not there. Doesn't mean they're not thinking it. It definitely does not mean that it doesn't come out in their art.
Yeah, and also I think even in more recent times, I've seen pictures from Japan of a Black Lives Matter rally and a pro-Trump rally. So
yeah, I saw
like,
that.
we've seen, like, there are people out there expressing political beliefs, American political and American Western political beliefs in Japan. So I mean, maybe you don't want any form of politics in your media, or you don't want to acknowledge it, but I mean, that's your choice. But recognize that, like, that might not be the real case of reality. Like, other people are able to interpret that just like you're able to not interpret that.
Yeah. And I think that's a good stopping point before we get more intensely political. I think we kind of covered everything. I think this was super fun. This is definitely, I think, a larger conversation that I think I don't want to discourage people from having it. I think we don't need to promote gatekeeping, but we don't need to promote censorship. Neither extreme. It's the whole problem is extremes and taking away from other people's experience. But to discuss the nuances, that's okay. We don't have to immediately cancel Endeavor because we can't handle the nuance of this being too close to real life, or we can talk about it. We can have a conversation, and that's okay. And your take is valid as well. Just tell me about it. I don't know. I think we should have more discussions, both you and me and the community, So thank you guys for joining us. I will be streaming next week around the same time, 2 p.m. EST. I think next week will be about Chainsaw Man. So I'll definitely post about it on my Twitter. If you want to keep up with, I usually do send out a reminder, or I post when it's going up. So if you want to keep up with that, follow me on Twitter. If you loved hearing ShaKing's takes today, follow her on Twitter at ShaKing807. And that's about it, guys. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Glad you made it.